it was kind of therapeutic for me to do the song. It kind of helped me get over it because I'm so pathetic in the song. Like, you know what I mean? That's what the root is. She got it on me, and I'm just fucked up, right? And it was good for me to get over that. It was hard for me even to do that song sometimes, record it, because when doing it, I have to put myself in that mode, you know.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening, downloading, and subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I'm 12 Kyle. Check this out. On this podcast, we're going to take a look back at one of the most incredible and dopest albums of the 2000s. It is one of the greatest neo-soul albums, hands down. That's right, we're talking about D'Angelo's second album entitled Voodoo. On January 25th, the year 2000, this album actually dropped. So it's been 20 years. And it's really mind-boggling when you think about it, because this album doesn't feel like it's been, out for 20 years, but it actually has. And we're going to break it down on this particular podcast. I guess before we start talking about the album, we got to take a trip back a little bit further than that. When you look at the landscape of what was actually happening in the year 2000, there was a shift. And to be quite honest, there was even a shift within neo soul. Around this time, Erykah Badu had dropped Baduism. Maxwell had came out with his first album. And also, you could never forget the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. So neo soul was riding a huge wave. And to be quite honest, someone like D'Angelo, who dropped his debut album in 1995, Brown Sugar, D'Angelo was away from the scene. And of course, we didn't have, the internet back then. So to be honest, I don't know what D'Angelo was doing at this particular time, but I just remember getting word that, a new album was coming from D'Angelo. And it had been 5 years since the first album. And it was really a different time in music, because this was during the CD era. This album came just a few months before the file sharing entity Napster. And it actually came out a couple of years before the iPod. So, I just wanted to kind of give you some context as to what was really going on, before this album actually came out. But again, if you were a fan like myself of D'Angelo's, you were waiting for, something new to come from him. Now, I don't need to tell you about Brown Sugar, because Brown Sugar was an incredible debut. And if you're familiar with this podcast, you've been following this podcast. I did a podcast about a year or two ago with my homegirl, Janae. Shout out to Janae. We did a joint called Brown Sugar versus Voodoo, where we went back and forth talking about, which album was actually better. And to me, it's almost like splitting hairs. So if you didn't get a chance to check out that podcast, when you finish listening to this one, you can go back and listen to that one as well. But it was interesting, just kind of talking about D'Angelo, the individual, and really, where he was musically. As you all know, or maybe you don't know, D'Angelo was someone who was heavily influenced by the likes of Jimi Hendrix, Sly Stone, George Clinton, all the way from Marvin Gaye to Stevie Wonder, definitely Curtis Mayfield. I'd probably say he's probably influenced by Al Green, Otis Redding, and of course, it goes without saying that he is influenced by Prince. I mean, who wouldn't be influenced by Prince? Nonetheless, you heard all of those elements on the first album, on the Brown Sugar album. We didn't really know what to expect with this second album. Like I said, the little bit of information that I got was that I do remember hearing that he would be working with my man Questlove from The Roots. Questlove was deemed the executive producer of this album. And so, me being a huge fan of The Roots, me being a huge fan of D'Angelo's, I couldn't wait to hear this album. And so it was just a situation where, again, it had been a while. And normally in music, at least back then, artists generally didn't take a lot of time in between, in between releasing music. So really for us to have to wait, 5 years for an album to come out, that was a little different. But honestly, if you're a fan of D'Angelo's, you knew that it was going to be worth the wait. So like I said, this album comes out January 25th, the year 2000. And it was crazy, man, because there were some singles that were released, prior to the album coming out. But honestly, we still didn't know what to expect. Like I said, the only thing we knew was that Questlove would be working with D'Angelo, and, the album was coming. Before I get into the tracks, let me just give you a little brief overview as far as like the production. Now this album, again, it's neo soul, right? So it's gonna be, you knew it was gonna be dope. Anytime you're dealing with neo soul and you had the likes of D'Angelo and Questlove. What we did not know, but would later find out, is just how, the production kind of came about, and how, the forces and all of the energy surrounding the album. First and foremost, the album was created in Electric Lady Studio, which is a studio that was Jimi Hendrix's studio that he opened up slightly, I think maybe a couple of years before he passed away, in Manhattan. And so, Stevie Wonder had recorded there. And so, it was a situation where D'Angelo kind of wanted to get the vibe of not just Jimi Hendrix, but, the likes of Stevie Wonder. And so, you had that energy going on. One thing we didn't know as well was that at the same time that this album was being produced, Questlove, who is labeled the quote unquote co-pilot of this album, he was actually also producing Common's album Like Water for Chocolate, which is one of my favorite albums, favorite hip hop albums, definitely my favorite from Common. And he was also producing Mama's Gun by Erykah Badu. And so the way that it was set up in Electric Lady Studio was that, D'Angelo might have one room. They might be working with Common in the next room, and then the room over from that room, they may be working with Erykah Badu. So you had a whole lot of different energy and people coming in and out. Also, Q-Tip came through. Q-Tip from a Tribe Called Quest, Talib Kweli from Black Star, and of course James Poser, who is the composer for a lot of the Roots music and everything. So there was a lot of synergy going on in these studio sessions. And I remember listening to an interview later on, and the audio engineer who did Voodoo, a guy by the name of Russell Elevado, he said that what they did was they used old school recording techniques. So everything is analog. But he also said that it was just basically plugins, analog, and live instrumentation. He said most of the album, with the exception of Untitled, How Does It Feel, was recorded live. No overdubbing, just live instrumentation. And if you're a fan of neo soul, if you're a fan like myself of just great music, there's nothing better than listening to live instrumentation. So while I can appreciate, the computer based music, if you will, there's something to be said for being able to be in a studio and have live music and just record. And Questlove also said that in their recording process was, they just recorded and they just recorded and recorded and recorded. And then a lot of the stuff that they recorded just stuck. And, just imagine coming into a studio and just having a jam session and you just jam for 4 hours straight. And then you look up and lo and behold, you've got a song. So you get that feel when you're listening to this album. It's really, really prevalent all throughout the album as far as how the instrumentation, the live instruments sound. And I think that's, honestly, it's a lost art, to be honest. Because, everything is so computerized now and, auto tunes and, so music definitely does not sound sonically like this anymore. But this album, they had that on there. And I think this is one of the many things that stand out with this album. But yeah, the production was crazy. Almost all of the songs on the album, 13 tracks, all of the songs are produced by D'Angelo, with the exception of Devil's Pie, which is co-produced by DJ, the world famous DJ Premier, and Untitled, How Does It Feel, and Africa were both co-produced by the great Raphael Sadiq from Tony. Other than that, that was it. It was just really just, D'Angelo being the producer and putting everything together. And then of course they had, some heavyweights coming in as far as, working with the live instruments. Everyone from, Angie Stone, who, sang on some tracks, like as the aforementioned James Poyser, Roy Hargrove, Pino Palladino, who else? Also contributions from the great Reggie Noble, aka Redman, and Clifford Smith, aka Method Man. So yeah, it was a lot of talent and a lot of energy surrounding this album. But yeah, the album was incredible. It was critically acclaimed at the time that it was released. This album actually went to being certified platinum. But it really wasn't even about the accolades that came with it. While it did receive a lot of accolades, it was an album that was loved and heralded by not only, fans, but critics as well. Voodoo actually won a Grammy for the best R&B album at the Grammy Awards. And the song Untitled, How Does It Feel, also won Best Male R&B Performance. So, when you have that kind of, accolades coming along with the album, that should tell you a lot about the album. But I don't think this album is a phenomenal album because it won a Grammy. That's just really just the icing on the cake because it was just so dope and so widely accepted as a phenomenal album that, again, it was just the icing on the cake, the fact that they were able to win awards with it. But incredible album. And again, as I look back on it, it's really hard for me to believe that this album is actually turning 20 years old. It really doesn't feel like that because if you listen to the sound and the feel of this album, you can almost put yourself back into 2000 at the time that this album came out. And one of the things that I really enjoy about this album, and I tell people all the time, regardless of how you feel about D'Angelo or Questlove or anyone else who performs on this album feels timeless, right? It doesn't feel like it was set in a particular period. it doesn't sound dated when you listen to it. It sounds very much fresh and, you know, up to date and up to par when you play it to this day. Honestly, for me, it goes without saying, but I'll tell you anyway. This is one of my favorite albums, period. I mean, any genre. I play this album at least once a week. I mean, it's that cold to me. But yeah, it was, and it came at a time again where, you know, music was shifting, hip hop was shifting, R&B, you know, was kind of falling by the wayside. But this was neo soul at its finest, and again, I can make a case that it's the best neo soul album. Definitely one of the best albums, if not the best album of the 2000s R&B albums. But yeah, it was just that dope. It was just that dope. And again, when you listen to this album, and if you haven't heard it in a while, I would encourage you after you finish listening to this podcast, pop it in, man. Spin it a couple of times. It is just that dope. I'll tell you what. Let's take a quick commercial break. And on the other side, well, first we'll hear from Questlove. Questlove will give you a breakdown as to how they actually recorded the album. And then on the other side, I'll break down the tracks and tell you why this album is as great as I always say that it is. So sit tight. We'll be back in just a second.
Studio A was D'Angelo's studio. But because he's notoriously a night person, he wouldn't even get to the studio till like 6 p.m. His hours are like from 6 p.m. to 11 a.m. So he would let Common do his work. We'd work with Common in the daytime. So to do Like Water for Chocolate, Common's album, we would start at like 10 in the morning. Get done around 6. If we had to do more stuff, then we go to the B room. So now Common has the B room, D'Angelo has the A room, and then in the C room, you know, it would be like accessory stuff. If I got to do Nick Acosta's record or Bilal's record or Erica, her album, Most Quali, everyone would use the C floor. So at one point, we just had that entire studio on lockdown, and everybody was just going into each other's sessions, doing stuff.
And just like that, we are back. Once again, it's your boy 12 Kyle. This is the 12 Kyle podcast. And we're taking a look back. Voodoo, 20 years later. The second album from a man, D'Angelo. As I mentioned before the break, we're going to talk about the tracks. But I wanted to kind of give you some context. One of the things that stood out to me, and I remember hearing, you know, Questlove say this, as well as D'Angelo say this in an interview, which was which was funny because you can go look on YouTube. D'Angelo doesn't do a lot of interviews, so if you see him being interviewed by someone, you want to sit down and listen and watch because he doesn't do a lot of interviews or a lot of press for that matter. Nonetheless, one of the things that kind of resonated with me that both of them said was that this album was kind of created because they were really tired of, you know, the BS that was R&B. R&B in the late 90s and the early 2000s really didn't sound like the R&B from the earlier 90s and 80s. You know, it wasn't about love. It wasn't about, you know, caring and having compassion for people or what have you. It was about something else. Sometimes it was about money. Sometimes it's about rap. Sometimes it's about, you know, sex or whatever the case may be. And they just wanted to kind of make a shift and, you know, put their stamp on what they deemed would be good music. So I think when you look at it from that concept, they really were frustrated with where music was. So sometimes when you're frustrated about where music is, it's easier to create from a space to make your own music to push the boundaries and the limits as to what you think the music should sound like. And to me, I think that's what Voodoo is. It's where they really, really push the boundary. And again, this is a phenomenal album. This album starts off with the first track, Player. I like this song. Well, actually, I love this song because it starts off really, really slow. And the bass line is so dope. It's just, it's thumping. And eventually they get into he gets into the song or what have you, but it's a very, very good intro to what is to come on the album. Then the second song, the aforementioned Devil's Pie. Devil's Pie was, if I'm not mistaken, Devil's Pie actually was the first song that was released on the album. That song actually came out. It was actually released in 1998, October of 1998. But Devil's Pie was the joint, man, because it featured just really a dope ass sound, because it was a mixture of a neo soul and kind of like a hip hop fusion. Again, as I mentioned earlier, this one was produced by the legendary DJ Premier from Gang Starr. So when you combine, Premier's banging beat and scratches and everything like that, along with the fusion of neo soul, I think it comes out really, really beautiful. Now, I did read, and I don't remember anybody in 2000 saying this, but I did remember reading some critics saying that they could have done without, this song on the album. That's BS to me. I mean, like, this song I think fits perfectly on the album. I don't think there was no way I would take it off. But I think this is a very sonic measurement and kind of fusion of, like I said, a little bit of hip hop and neo soul. And I think it sounds perfect, and it fits perfect to where they have it placed on the album. Then you go into the third song, Left and Right, featuring Redman and Method Man. I love this joint, man. I mean, it doesn't get much better than having Redman and Method Man rap over your track. But it's so funky. That's one of the things about this album. First and foremost, it's a cold ass album, but not only is it cold, but it's funky. And I mean, like, there's no way that you can listen to this joint and not bob your head. And, D'Angelo, I'm sure he's fans of Redman and Method Man. And I don't know how hard or easy it was for them to get on the track, but I'm pretty sure when he asked, they probably jumped. The guitar sound on this is just incredible, man. So it's one of the ones that, if you aren't feeling the album, which I don't know how you could possibly not be feeling the album, by the time you get to this track, you are definitely bobbing your head. Then it goes on to the next track, The Line. And I think Voodoo kind of changes and shifts a little bit, which is okay at this track. And I think you go from being, Devil's Pie was kind of upbeat, and then Left and Right was kind of upbeat. The Line is much, much slower, much more melodic. The vocal arrangements are crazy. There's timing here. There's great tone. There's great texture. The music is just very, very stern and key. I love it, man. I love this joint, man. It is a dope ass song. Then you move to the next track, Send It On. Send It On, man. Whoo. I talked about this on the podcast with Janae. This is one of my favorites. This is D'Angelo really, really showing y'all that, even though he had been gone for a while, he was back, and like he didn't have any peers. And I think that was one of the things that, really stood out to me. His falsetto is crazy. And I don't know that there are many who have, been especially of his peers and even of his era, that had a falsetto like that sounded so perfect. And one of the dope things about D'Angelo was that I always found this interesting was that D'Angelo came across like the guy, he was widely liked and loved by men and women. Ladies wanted to get with him, fellas wanted to kick it with him. You know, that type of dude. He was just that guy. And then so we moved to the next track, Chicken Grease. Chicken Grease kind of reminds me of something that you might hear from Curtis Mayfield or maybe even the great George Clinton or somebody like that. It's just funky, man. It is so funky. This is a song I think that probably you could have dropped off somewhere in the 70s and been cool with it. But another one, this is another banger where even though the tempo changes, D'Angelo, he doesn't lose stride in this album. I mean, at any point in the album. And on the next joint, he slows it down with One More Again. One More Again is, a very, very dope ballad where, he's kind of lamenting over, some things that happened in a relationship and he's trying to fix it, or at least he would like to fix it. But man, if you've ever gone through some things in a relationship, One More Again will speak to you in that atmosphere. Then the next track, The Root. You heard D'Angelo at the top of the podcast talking about, how he felt writing The Root and how difficult it was at times for him to actually perform The Root. As many of you know, D'Angelo was in a very serious relationship with the singer Angie Stone, and I think I know they had a child, a son. He didn't say specifically that this song was about her, but it's about her. But yeah, it's crazy, man. In the name of love and war, you took my shield and sword. Whew. Trust me, everybody's been there. I don't care if you're a guy or girl, whatever the case may be. You've gone through some things in a relationship and it made you feel like maybe, just maybe that this person had something over you and you don't know what it was. But the guitar is crazy. This song is buttery. That's the best way I could describe it. Then we move to the next track, the Spanish joint. Everything changes here. Spanish joint is one of my favorite joints on this album. Shout out to the late great Roy Hargrove. His horns are crazy. I mean, like crazy horns on his joint. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in this studio session, because this song sounds like a jam session. This song sounds like they were just sitting around and they were just playing, and this is what was created from it. Crazy song. Like I said, one of my favorite songs on the album. Then the next track, Feel Like Making Love. This is a D'Angelo cover. He did a cover on the first album for Smokey Robinson's Cruisin'. But this one is Roberta Flack's 1974's Feel Like Making Love. And he does it justice, man. This song is, I guess this is the best way I can describe this song. This song is incredibly dope, and it's probably my least favorite song on the album. It's not skippable because I'm going to listen. It's probably the least best song on the album, and it's dope as hell. Next track, Great Day in the Morning / Booty. Great Day in the Morning is a Southern term, first and foremost. So when I saw that on the track list, I was like, wait a minute, Great Day in the Morning. But Great Day in the Morning, man, it is incredible. It is a true banger. I mean, D'Angelo is he's all over the place with this, and you can't. You just have to take this song in. I mean, like everything from the tempo to the beat to the him, singing his heart out. But he's still looking for a great day in the morning. I mean, yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. Then the next track, Untitled. How does it feel? Now this song is very, very popular. He shot a video for this song. And in the video, he's naked. Well, I mean, he's not really naked, but I mean, he actually is naked. But the way that the video was shot, there was a screen behind him and a screen in front of him, so the people on the set couldn't see him naked. We are actually only seeing a video from the waist up. And I remember there was some crazy rumors back in the day that let's say that there was just a young lady standing in front of D'Angelo as he was singing this at the video, and she was, putting in work. Allegedly. I don't know where that rumor came from, and it sounds crazy, but from what I could tell, that's a lie. Nonetheless, crazy song. Now, if there's ever a time where D'Angelo reminds me of Prince, or you can hear the Prince influence, it's on How Does It Feel? And I have to talk about the video along with the song, because the song was incredible and the video was visually dope. But the video really put D'Angelo into quote unquote sex symbol status. When Brown Sugar came out, I remember the first video from Brown Sugar was the, self-titled Brown Sugar. He was dude sitting behind a piano. He had this big jacket on. He wasn't showing off his body, but when How Does It Feel came out, I mean, that was the joint, and everybody, was checking for this video. Like I said, the ladies loved him. And, fellas looked at him and was like, yo, how can I get my body like that? But, yeah, it was crazy, man. D'Angelo, phenomenal song. Yeah, it's, man, when you get a chance, check out the video. It is very well shot. And, I saw like little behind the scenes stuff as far as them talking about how they came up with the concept of it. Really, really dope. And then the album ends with track 13, Africa. Africa really reminds me, and I talked about it on the podcast with Janae. It took me a while to warm up to this song, and I don't mean a long while, but initially it wasn't like a favorite of mine, but I love this song, man. I think he took him to church. You can hear the musical influences. I love this song, man. This song is a banger. It closes out the album perfectly. The subject matter is really, really dope. You can't go wrong. Overall, this is, as I mentioned before, this is a phenomenal album. I'd be lying if I told you that it wasn't one of my favorite albums, because it is. And I'm not just speaking this as a fan just because I think it's a dope album. But I think D'Angelo changed the game in a lot of ways with this album. Not only is it sonically dope, but it's just, you put it on and you feel good. It's one of those feel good albums. And honestly, it's an album that has really, truly stood the test of time. Like I said, it's mind boggling that it's 20 years old, but when you're influenced like D'Angelo was by, guys like Sly Stone and Prince and Stevie Wonder, it makes sense that your music would be timeless, because, their music was timeless. I would implore anyone who's listening to, take a listen to this album and just reflect as far as, where, D'Angelo was at that particular time when he recorded this album. And then you also have to keep in mind the fact that for as great as Brown Sugar was and as successful as D'Angelo was, to go away and then come back 5 years later, and some would say make an even better album than your first album, that's saying a lot. Personally, for me, like, I have to, it's just me. I like when if I listen to Brown Sugar, I gotta listen to Voodoo. If I listen to Voodoo, I gotta listen to Brown Sugar. That's just that's just the way it is. But this is a phenomenal album by an incredibly talented artist. And 20 years later, we're lucky that he gave us this classic, because it truly is a classic. That's going to do it for me. Thanks again for checking out the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I'm your boy 12 Kyle. We'll catch you guys next time. 5 G's.
Okay, I can play this joint I wrote called Spanish Joint. It's on the new Voodoo album. Something to get me through this thing. Hey, give me a look back. Knows I'm glad. Yeah, won't give me a good thing. Simple in me, feeling free. Letting go and letting on my feet. Hey, brushed her back. Knows I'm glad. Yeah, won't give me a good thing. Believe sin is true. Heaven will be will forever do. Whatever the cost, stop being fool. I won't let that hurt you. Do what you Gotta get out of here, yeah. I'm in the dark and the light looks sincere. Yeah, brushed up my back.